They are going to demonize the victim.
He wasn't planning a murder, he was planning dinner.
I swear to God, I will kill you. I will strangle you to death.
I will tell my dad so many lies about you. I will end your career and your life.
There was like bombshell after bombshell after bombshell.
She said, I will straight up mutilate your penis.
Hey there, folks, it's official. Singer David has been ordered to stand trial for murder, but we just found out it was the person he's accused of killing that actually threatened to kill him. Welcome everybody to the show. This is Robes. I'm TJ. I did not see this coming, Robes. They produced, which was shocking to me in court in a preliminary hearing on day 5. Text messages from 13-year-old, 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez saying she wanted to kill David.
Yeah, and threatened to not just kill him, but to ruin his life, ruin his career. She even at one point threatened to mutilate a body part of his. Yes, she got very specific, and these were all in the hours leading up to her death. These are all within a few days, or at least within a few hours of when prosecutors say she was murdered.
This was a hell of a stretch of a preliminary hearing. If you've been following along, and certainly if you've been following along here with us, we've said from day one, it seems almost silly. The point of a preliminary hearing is to present evidence before the judge to determine if there's enough to move forward with the trial. That was never a question in this, so it seems odd that the preliminary hearing, day 5, it's done, and the headline isn't really that he's going to trial. We kind of knew that. Some of the headlines now, Robes, are about what we learned. And Robes, for the first time, would you not say, day 5, more so than day 1, 2, 3, or 4, the defense seemed to offer a narrative, yes, but maybe make some inroads.
Yeah, and I do think that this was something that surprised a lot of people who have been covering this case, following this case, and think they know what happened. We all have had our theories. Most of us have been pretty confused as to the choices that singer David made before, during, and after. If things happened the way prosecutors say they did, it's incredibly confusing why somebody would choose to make the steps he's made. And so it's been very difficult to try and figure out what his defense attorneys could possibly say, given this mountain of evidence against him. And yet, on day 5, we started to see and hear things that we haven't until now.
That Rome's might suggest a line of defense that could be the only line of defense. What are you going to do? He chopped her up, right? There's nothing, and also nothing in the preliminary hearing suggested by the defense that he wasn't responsible for that part.
And
right?
they've never actually said that he wasn't responsible for that part. They have been very specific in their wording in their defense of their client, saying that he did not murder Celeste Rivas Hernandez and that he did not contribute to her death. Never in any statement or any interview have they ever given any indication that they were planning on fighting this notion that A, they were in a relationship, a sexual relationship, or B, that he dismembered and disposed of her body. They haven't touched those other 2 significant charges. They have only responded specifically to the murder charges.
And so this is how they put it together. Let's go through here day 5, which was the final day of the preliminary hearing. At the end, yes, the judge said there's enough evidence, you're officially going to trial. But before we got all to that, they still had Detective Colin
Farrell. It's not Colin.
It's not Colin. Corey. I've been trying to call him Colin Farrell. It looks like the last name is the same. His name is Corey Farrell. I keep wanting to call him Colin Farrell.
That's funny.
Okay, so Detective Corey.
CF.
Detective Corey Farrell was back on the stand. He was the one who handled Robes a lot of the electronics, the text messages, and went through all this stuff. Thousands and thousands and thousands of these things he went through. But Robes, when he was up there talking before the prosecution, they put together a pretty specific timeline. April 2nd to April 26th, and then specifically April 23rd. What happened that night? That is the night that he allegedly lured her over to the house to kill her. But Robes?
Did he?
Did he?
Did he lure her?
This is the way they at least can say how this went down. April 22nd, Robes, they had an argument, they said via text message, and they shared some of this in court. But Robes, it was no surprise, it was over another girl.
Yes, she was upset about another girl who posted a photo, correct, onto social media where it looked as though she was at David's home, her boyfriend's home. So yeah, she's upset. She's so angry. I don't know what it wasn't clear what he responded back to her, but we saw how she was responding to him, and they were getting more and more threatening. She was getting angrier and angrier that she believed he was cheating on her, or at least he was spending time with another woman in his house, and she didn't like it.
All right, so that is on April 22nd. They get into this fight, this back and forth. April 23rd is when she goes over to his house, and that's when they say, prosecutors, that he killed her. So Robes, this timeline is now really, really important. 8:39 p.m. on April 23rd, 2025. 8:39 p.m. Uber picks up Celeste Rivas Hernandez at a home to drive her over to his place. At 10:10 p.m., she sends what authorities say is her final message, saying, "Almost there, open your door if you're home." Also, 10:10, the Uber arrives, and at 10:10, David writes, "Gate open, door unlocked." That's at 10:10. And then there's no activity on either one of their phones for another 21 minutes. And Robes, it's that 21 minutes that's the key to the case.
That is when prosecutors say David Anthony Burke murdered Celeste Rivas Hernandez in those 21 minutes. And they know this because, yes, she responded. So 10:10, we know she was alive. At 10:31, David starts texting Celeste's phone, acting as if she never showed up, acting as if she never came to his home, acting as if he was desperate to find out where she could possibly be.
Yes, it was, I think they might have shared up to 10. Where you at? Where you at, bro? Celeste, what's going on? Constant little, and they say it was part of the plan. They say it was part of the plan. But she, after 10:10, after saying, "Open your door if you're home," is never heard from again.
Last text, last activity on her phone, period.
Yes.
Her phone goes dead after that. She's never heard from, she's never seen again after that text. So that is a pretty good indication of when a murder or a killing or a death took place. How it happened, prosecutors say it happened right away. Said he killed her as soon as she walked in the door. But we're hearing now from the defense, and they are setting the stage for a very different scenario.
Yeah. The 10:31 to 10:36 is when they say that evening that he is sending these rapid text messages, trying to give himself some kind of an alibi. At 11:30 that night is when they are able to track his vehicle, track his phone, and they know he was on the road going north from his LA home. And it's along that route is where her ID was later eventually found, and they can point to and suggest, yes, he tossed it or got rid of it on that trip. Robes, I don't know. 2 puncture wounds. Robes, she was able to send a message at 10:10 and wasn't able to send one at 10:15, 10:20, 10:30, 10:40, the
Never
rest
again.
of that. So something must have happened immediately. Why? Why did it have to? That's going to be key, Robes, because we got 2 different storylines here. And you know what? We were talking about this earlier. How are they able to prove that he killed her immediately? Why do they say that? Is that just theory, or did they have some evidence they presented?
I believe it's theory just because of the short period of time from when she walks in the door until he's sending these seemingly fake messages trying to figure out where she is. 21 minutes is not that long. That is a pretty quick period of time. And so for someone to actually either bleed out or die or not be able to access their phone, that's a pretty immediate, hey, how are you? And was he planning it? Did a fight happen? Did she attack him first? We don't know what happened in those 21 minutes, but obviously something lethal happened in those 21 minutes.
So the detective on the stand, the prosecution got done with him, and then you had the defense take their turn. And this is where, Robes, there was like bombshell after bombshell after bombshell, and one of the biggest was he said that the family of Celeste Rivas Hernandez was well aware she was dating David and was even supportive of it.
Gave their blessing.
What?
They claim, the defense claims, that Celeste Rivas Hernandez's parents actually had to sign a permission slip for him to take her out of the country when he made that trip to London, and that her adult sister accompanied them. So this was something that they're claiming the entire Rivas Hernandez family was well aware of. We also have already seen this entered into evidence that David's family knew of Celeste Rivas Hernandez because she came to his home in Texas. So both families have met each other and are aware of this relationship, and that is something that we didn't necessarily know at all beforehand, but adds to the mystery behind how things turned as
help me
sour
understand.
and as awful as they did.
Help me understand a scenario where a family living in Southern California would be okay with their 13-year-old daughter dating and traveling out of the country with a guy, a grown man.
Well, maybe they just tried to stop this kind of Romeo and Juliet scenario where you're underage and he's, much older, and it's obviously it's illegal, but maybe they were thinking, we can't stop her, she loves him, we might as well go ahead and sanction this. And look, he's got this big amazing career that's burgeoning. How amazing for her to maybe to have access to a whole new world, a whole new way of living. I don't know what's going through their heads, but you got to think that maybe some of that was coming into play. It just felt like they couldn't fight her on it anymore. She was going to do it anyway. Coupled with the fact that he seemed like a nice guy, that he seemed like he had a great career, that he might be able to introduce her to a life that she would never have known otherwise. Maybe all of those things forced this family or these parents to say, you know what, this isn't what we want to happen or what we would like to be going on, but we'll be okay with it because at least we'll have her in our lives. That's one scenario I can think of.
And the other one? Do you have a second one?
No.
Because that one doesn't fly for me. Because the girl is 13.
Yeah,
She's
I mean,
13.
obviously, that's the
so
big issue.
I don't need to fight with anybody about, she's going to do what she wants to do. You're 13.
She had run away multiple times.
This is a crime. You can get police involved.
That's true.
In this thing. Yeah, it's him. He's doing this to my Robes. They had options other than just a firm talking to.
They did.
In this type of, because this is a crime. So that is why I hear that, and I can get that to a certain degree, but this is a baby. This is a child who is being molested. Period. And it's hard to understand that or see where a family go to London, sign.
Well, and to see and to hear that they were aware and to know that what they're sitting through in court has to now be even more excruciating, because if you think in any way you signed off on it or you gave your blessing for a relationship that ended the way it did when she was a minor, a very young minor, I think that would obviously add to their pain. Going through just the evidence of what was actually occurring, the fact that their young daughter, we learned throughout these preliminary hearings, was pregnant, had an abortion, all of these things that they might not have been aware of. It doesn't seem like they were aware of it. But yeah, to hear that they knew of the relationship and approved of the relationship to some degree is incredibly difficult to understand.
And that was the detective who got up on the stand and was explaining this, Robes, and telling this. So this wasn't some far-fetched idea that the defense was trying to introduce. This was a key prosecution witness saying this was the case. How that changes anything, I don't know. But, Robes, it does. They're starting to weave a different story now about this relationship, including, and in particular, Robes, the threats. The prosecution, when they got up there with the detective, went through several text messages that looked good for them, if you will, the exchanges between the two. The defense got up there, and Robes, they plucked out text messages that told a different story. One in which Celeste Rivas Hernandez, and again, are we supposed to take this seriously, Robes? I swear to God, I will kill you. I will strangle you to death. She texted that to her boyfriend.
A 14-year-old little girl texting that to her boyfriend because she's upset that he's taken a picture with another girl in his home. Look, I feel like that wouldn't have been taken seriously by most people. It's not that it's an okay thing to text, but that is not necessarily a text that I was expecting to hear. Came from her to David. The other text was, I will tell my dad so many lies about you. I will end your career and your life. That is significant, and that one actually I feel like feels a little more possible and probable. Like she's got something that she can hold over his head. She's 13. He's, I guess at that point, I guess she's 14 at this point, he's 20. So yes, to think that she could get her dad involved, tell him even more lies about him, enough to make him mad enough to go to police, that would be career ending. That would end his life. He would lose his freedom. He would absolutely be charged and processed for that crime, especially if a girl's father is beating the drum.
I don't know how much was behind the threat. I do know, though, Robes, they can start to weave a story and paint a picture, which they are starting to do, about Celeste Rivas Hernandez that goes beyond a troubled, sweet, innocent child who was strictly a victim in all this. It's starting.
Yes,
It's starting.
Look, the one of the other texts that they did testify to yesterday in court was also of note. She said, "I will straight up mutilate your penis." So she texted him these 3 texts among many texts, the day before she ended up seeing him. So that's the timeline. That's where these texts fit in within the days before her death.
A couple of them do. The mutilation one was, I think, months prior. So they are showing that this wasn't just a one-off. This was a pattern to some degree. They're starting to give us some, or wanting to give some insight potentially into where her head was.
Right.
And it might not have been a rational place.
Right. Ultimately, I would think it's fair to infer, yes, she's making these threats and they are specific and they are violent and they are threatening death. But at the end of the day, it appears all she really wanted was an exclusive mutual relationship with him, where they ride off into the sunset together, because coupled with all of these texts where she's threatening his life, she's also begging to come over.
That was another, I guess, check or somewhat of a win, if you will, for the prosecution, because Rome's a big part of this. They call them aggravating circumstances that you can attach to a murder charge, that if you're convicted with those circumstances, it essentially ups the ante and you can get the death penalty. One of those aggravating circumstances is that he lured her to her death. The defense is now pointing some things out that I think pretty immediately kind of poo-poo that idea.
Yes,
Rose?
I do think so, and that's why we saw the defense already starting to lay the groundwork for the fact that they don't believe the way the prosecution has described this crime is exactly, or even remotely, how it took place. And among them, and of significance, is that yes, she willingly, not just willingly came over, she was begging to come over for days, saying, "We need to meet face to face. We need to have a conversation. I need to see you. I want to go over to your house." So she was begging him to come over,
Yeah.
and he was saying, "I'm busy. I got an album to release. I
He was
got
blowing her
stuff
off
to
for the
do."
most part, right?
He was blowing her off. So he wasn't, according to these text changes, it certainly doesn't look as though he was devising some plan to lure her over to kill her. So those text messages tell a very different story than what the prosecution has been selling.
And that's important, Robes. We say this is the process. They have to go through it. Even though on day one, and from all we've heard in this case, it's overwhelming, the
Yes.
amount of evidence. Of course, he's going to go to trial. But why is this still important? Robes, they might have just pointed something out to save his life. If you can get the aggravating circumstance off the table, you possibly could get the death penalty off the table. And this is why we go through the process.
Yes, and that's their leverage right now, where it would seem to maybe perhaps when they showed all this evidence in this preliminary hearing, the defense feels so overwhelmed by the fact that they can't overcome it. They go to the bargaining table and they come up with a plea deal, and the prosecution can take the death penalty off the table, and voila, you might actually get a deal and spare the family and spare the cost of a lengthy, high-profile trial. So that is one thought, that the defense absolutely made inroads. I also thought this was interesting in terms of intent, premeditation, all of the things that are a part of those aggravated first-degree murder charges. The fact that what he was texting her, and look, you could argue that this was all planned and manipulative, but he wasn't texting her angry thoughts and they weren't going back and forth. He was asking her what she wanted to eat when she got there. he was talking to her about takeout. He was talking to her about In-N-Out Burger. That is of note. Hadn't thought about that. To me, that does change the feeling of this meeting that was supposed to happen, or her coming over. The fact that he was texting her about In-N-Out Burger.
Oh, well, the defense used the line, he wasn't planning a murder, he was planning dinner. And if you go through, if you're sitting on that jury now and you buy all of what you've heard so far, which is that he did not lure her over there, if you buy so far that she seemed unstable, that she was very angry to the point of making those types of threats, if you couple that with the fact that he tried to keep her from the house for many, many days. Robes, if you consider all of that, and then you consider the 21 minutes we talk about, that it was only a 21-minute gap, possibly for her to die, then Robes, it does suggest, like, what happened? This wasn't premeditated. So you now get to the point where you wonder what did happen. And if you leave open the option that this wasn't premeditated, you leave a lot of other things on the table for possibly happening. An accident, an argument that escalated. Did she attack him? Did she threaten to harm herself? All those things that I didn't think were on the table, Robes, now feel like they are, because the premeditated part, they've done a decent job at least putting some doubt in your mind about that.
Correct. And then in terms of him being a sexual deviant, they also have text messages that show Celeste Rivas Hernandez multiple times tried to pass herself off older to David. I don't know how much that plays into any of this or the charges, but at one point she texted him that she was 16, and at another point she said she was 18. I mean, that has to say something, at least in terms of his intent, or initially maybe even getting into the relationship. Was he fully aware of how old she was?
Yes, has to be that answer. They do, and the prosecution, the defense did share those text messages as well. In one year, she says she was 16. Another year, she says she was 18. Did he believe that? It's hard to understand that. If she needed a waiver to fly with him, she wouldn't need that if she were not a minor. What threat is there if he's thinking he's dating a girl who's of age? How are you going to threaten with ruining his career? If just going out public and saying we broke up and he's a bad guy?
No,
so
obviously.
It's too. It's hard to understand that and even a 12, 13, 14-year-old, quite frankly, looks different from a 16, a 17, an 18-year-old girl. Robes, to look at her and think otherwise and not know it for 2-3 years, it's a stretch.
It's hard to believe. I think what is maybe, and I don't know how much this would impact what the jury thinks of him in terms of some of these charges he's facing, but I do think it is plausible to believe that maybe initially he thought she was older. Eventually, obviously, you got to think he finds out. He knows. Even the police are going up to him in 2024 saying, you know she's 13, right? So he had plenty of people, and certainly if you've got access to, he had her, if what's prosecutors say is true, if he actually did have her passport ID and threw it out after her death, obviously he's seen her ID. He knows her birth year. He knows how old she is. But I do think it's possible that at the beginning of the relationship, or maybe even at the beginning of the sexual relationship, he did believe she was older when he started. I think it's hard to believe he didn't ultimately figure out how old she was,
and
or
again,
how young she was.
I'm trying to think. Why is that? April, August, when was it? 2024, when the police, as a part of the search for her.
Correct.
When in 2024 was that?
It was in the spring, so she was 13.
Okay, so forget that text message completely. They have proven that he was informed. We actually saw we didn't see it, but in court they played the body cam video from the officer showing up to his house and explaining and talking about the girl is 13, and he said, "Oh, she told me." I hear people saying she's 18. What?
He's trying to pass it off, but yes, at that point
he was told. At
that point, he was told.
We are looking for a 13-year-old girl that we think you know, and you do know.
he knows. He knows she was 13.
Yes.
Yeah, there's nothing they can do in that regard.
Yes, and so they could only prove that maybe initially when he began the relationship, he didn't know her age. He found out later, and at that point it was too late. They were already in love, and they were already having sex, and they were already in a huge relationship. So what's a guy to do?
Yes, there is an answer to that.
There is an answer to that.
Tell you what most guys would
And
do.
the relationship.
This is bizarre.
Immediately.
So when is this going to go to trial? Yes, he will go to trial. From everything we were hearing prior to the preliminary hearing, the expectation was sometime next year. Could still be the case, but now, Rose, plenty of folks are reporting that there are, whatever the rules or law in place, that a trial needs to come in the next 90 days. Now, I guess they could get continuances, I guess they could be delayed, and I guess the judge maybe has some discretion with the calendar, but right now, this might happen by the end of the year.
Which is
Hard
pretty
to believe.
remarkable. Yeah, it took so long for them to actually even acknowledge him as a person of interest. Then it took even longer for the arrest to take place. And it's been delayed and delayed and delayed, different hearings. Finally, we have this big preliminary hearing, and it's hard to imagine that we could then be going full steam ahead, lightning speed steam ahead, it seems, to have a trial by the end of this year. But look, stranger things have happened, and the defense has certainly gotten to see what the prosecution has, but they did say, the prosecution did make a point to say that this was just a fraction of the evidence that they have against David.
I believe that.
And that is how they put it. This was what we saw, and our jaws dropped, and there were audible gasps, and folks were shocked at what we did see and hear and read in these 5 days, but they say that is a fraction of the evidence, and there was already some pushback. And this is going to be hard for the defense, but I understand David's life is at stake. But there's already been some pushback at the idea that they are going to demonize the victim. But oftentimes that is what happens. That does seem where they are headed in terms of holding her, at least in some way, responsible for her own death. It does appear that the defense is going down that path, and it's a dangerous one, because a jury listening to and seeing the result, the outcome for this 14-year-old girl, they have to be very careful at making her appear to be the bad guy.
Yeah. Rose, I still see that picture with the big black curly hair that she has, and we weren't in the courtroom. We didn't see the autopsy photos. But for whatever reason, I can't sometimes now get the thought of body bags, black body bags, blue inflatables, maggots, flies, mush, right? All these things we're hearing. I've created some picture of her based on the descriptions from the autopsy, and that's too bad. I'm trying to remember that other sweet picture of her standing there, big curly hair with. This has been one of the most difficult cases to hear, and I haven't heard or seen anything because there are no cameras in the courtroom.
Yeah, and don't you think, though, a lot of the impact it's had on you personally, I think for a lot of parents out there, you have a 13-year-old. When you actually are living with and loving and bringing up a young girl at the same exact age when all of this was happening to Celeste Rivas Hernandez, you can't help but feel a personal connection to a story like this. And I would say that probably is having a significant impact on you and anyone who has raised a daughter or who has a 13-year-old in their lives. You know how young and innocent they are. And even if what she was doing was adult-like, she shouldn't have been. Someone should have been protecting her from herself, even in those moments. And so so many people let her down, and so it's just very dangerous to make her the villain in this case when she ultimately paid the price of her life.
All right, folks, so we're waiting now. There will be another court date, August 31st.
Yes.
They're expected to handle some scheduling, so we should find out a whole lot more from that point about when this trial could possibly happen. Rose, it's not outside the realm of possibility. There could be a plea deal.
Yeah.
There could be.
Absolutely.
But as long as they're dangling the death penalty, that would be a bargaining chip. But if the defense thinks they just made a point during the preliminary hearing that maybe the prosecution doesn't have that thing to dangle necessarily anymore. This is fascinating and devastating all at the same time. We're keeping a close eye on it. We appreciate you going along with us. I'm TJ, that's Robes. Talk to you soon.